Good morning, everybody. I'm Robert Scheer, and this is your 6 AM Wake Up. All 12-step programs rely on this concept of we. They are we programs. What they mean by that is a lot of us think we're unique and alone, and sharing what's going on with you is a big element of 12-step recovery. This next topic is really an effort to explain to you how happiness changes over your lifetime. And it won't necessarily make you happier, but it may help you understand and realize you're not alone. It's also a good way to overlay your relationships and understand what's maybe going on with your children, your peers, your cohorts, those kinds of things. So happiness is cyclical. We tend to think it's unique to each of us, but it's not. It follows certain patterns, and these patterns actually cut across race, religion, culture, nationality. In fact, happiness and the level of happiness is somewhat predictable as you age and you go through life. This is one of the most replicated findings in all of the happiness research. It's what we call the U-shaped curve of happiness. In most countries, men particularly tend to experience high happiness in youth. Then they have a declining happiness in midlife, and then a resurgence, a greater happiness later in life. And I'll explain all of these for a second. This is not true across the board, and happiness is difficult to measure, and it's very relative. But these are general guidelines, and I think when you hear them, you'll make sense. When you're young adults, these are people sort of late teens all the way maybe up into their early 30s. They have high happiness quotients. Why? Well, think about it. They're full of optimism at that stage. The world is their oyster. You hear that all the time. They're just getting started. Everything is new and novel. Their relationships are getting started with their future partners. They may be starting to have families and children, buying their first home. All of those things create a sense of forward orientation. They're looking ahead. They're also starting to learn their identity, who they are, what they stand for, who they really like. Young people at this stage have lots of hope and very little regrets, and a sense that life is full of possibilities. Then in midlife, which we define more as 40s and 50s, and you'll hear this talked about a lot of times like a midlife crisis among men. That's when they run out and buy the sports car, or marriages start to break up. And if you think about it, midlife is when you have maximum responsibility. Your children are growing older, less dependent on you, but they create a lot of financial responsibilities. You may have aging parents. You've lost some of your youthful exuberance. Things aren't as novel in your 40s and 50s. In fact, I've often heard people say that life starts to feel like it's a pretty short menu. You may even start to think about your own mortality as certain physical limitations creep in. We become aware of our aging. And it's at this stage in life where regrets start to creep in. You realize that the things that you thought were possible when you were young aren't necessarily going to be achieved. Instead of thinking about what you could become, you start to realize what you are. In essence, you start to realize that all the dreams that you had may not necessarily come true, and this can create a sense of grief. And by the way, it doesn't really matter your level of success. Even if you've had a lot of accomplishments, this kind of sense of possibilities becoming limited start to creep in. But then here's the good news. As you get into your 60s and 70s, happiness rises again. I often say that if I had known I was going to be this happy when I got into my 60s, I would have hurried to get here. Research consistently shows that older men, they're less reactive, they're more emotionally balanced. They're also less competitive a lot of life's major challenges are behind them. And this reduces pressure and allows more perspective and actually just greater acceptance. So if you're dreading growing old, don't. The best part of your life may well be ahead of you. And as you're thinking about your life and thinking about the people in your life, this U-shaped happiness curve may help you as a frame of reference. Thanks for listening to my thoughts for the day.